featured speaker today that I think he may tell us about. Neville is chairman of Great Northern Building Products, and we appreciate your being here today to introduce Jessica.
So, a lot of times, when we're all at cocktail parties, we're asked the question, what do you do? And a lot of, chairman of Great Northern, all that kind of stuff. And then people ask, well, what does your wife do? And I say, there's no other way to say this but than to say this. She is a #1 New York Times best-selling author. She has published, printed, sold 20 million books, okay? She's done this 30 individual titles, and she's in over 26 languages across the globe. So really, another way to look at it is like she's in the NFL. She is in the NBA. She is absolutely in the major leagues. And this is her third career, okay, as a #1, sort of third stage in her career, if you will. Before this, when we met in Boston, she was chief of staff of Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center, a Harvard-affiliated hospital. She's a lawyer. She's a Smith grad. The best way to phrase it is that she just kicks ass in whatever she does. There's this little-known middle phrase, okay, middle phase, when we first moved to Louisville in 2003, and I should preface, when we were married and in our condominium in Cambridge, and I lived in, as you all know, I'm from here, I lived in New England about 10 years, and I decided that I was done. But I knew that I couldn't say, let's move to Kentucky, because it would freak her out. So I said, I know, sitting at the dinner table, I no longer know what I am doing in New England. And she sat bolt straight up, eyes wide, and said, I am not moving to Kentucky. And so in 2003, a Smith grad, a lawyer, chief of staff of Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center, decided to pursue this writing career, which I've been very supportive of, and it's a long story in its own right. And in 2 weeks, she was reduced to little Neville's wife. All right, and that was a miserable time. That was just not fun at all for anybody. So it took a good 5 or 10 years for her to really connect to Louisville, go Cards. But it's with great honor that now, when I go deliver the car for service or whatever, they say, how are you, Mr. Bird? Okay? It's now with great honor that I get to introduce to you J.R. Ward, Jessica Bird, also known as Little Neville's wife.
I'm going to try and... Okay, so I'm very proud to be Little Nell's wife. And my father was a Rotarian in New York State for many years. He was a banker. So, hi Dad. He has passed, but he would be very proud to know that I'm speaking at a Rotarian event. My husband and I talk a lot about business, and he's actually one of my business advisors. And he has a great saying. He says there are 2 parts of business. What do you do, and what are you? So what do I do? I'm an author. Specifically, I'm a commercial author. But what I am is I'm in the entertainment business. So it's a very specific field. And specifically what I do is I compete for the 22 minutes that a woman is waiting in the subway for her train to arrive on bench. I compete for the soldier in Afghanistan's 4 hours, where he is waiting between when he had his meal and when he is going on post. I compete for the woman who can't sleep at 12:13 in the morning and has 4 hours that she wants to pass so that she can finally pass out before she gets up at 6:30. I compete for the time of the person who's reading on the airplane. I compete for the person who is covered with coppertone lying on a towel on a beach. Specifically, what I am in competition with, I don't really view as other authors. I compete with movies, TV, the internet. I compete with sports. I compete with knitting, crocheting, reading the newspaper. And how do I compete? I compete by providing my segment of my marketplace with an identical experience in a different way every time I put a book out. So specifically what I mean is, I am Coke, I am Pepsi, I am Sprite. I am J.R. Ward in the marketplace. So when someone goes out and says, I want a Coke, they want that specific taste, the specific carbonation. Maybe they like the color of the label because they're a Cards fan. Maybe they hate Pepsi. For whatever reason, when they choose, as they are facing that refrigerated unit and have all of these different decisions to make, my readers choose me because they know that they're going to taste Pepsi. They're going to get that Sprite. They're going to get exactly what they want. The tricky thing about doing this when you're an author is that I'm actually not a carbonated soda. I have to deliver that experience to my readership in a reliable way that has to be completely different than all the other 29 other times they read my book. And readers want, so when they open up the book, they want a specific world. They want to have highs, they want to have lows, they want to be guaranteed a happily ever after at the end. They want mystery, they want suspense, they want death, they want fighting. So I have to give it to them every single time I put a book out without repeating myself. And the reason why I'm paid as well as I am is because publishers are in the business of chaining lightning in a bottle. So all publishers, and now there are only 5 left, major ones in New York, all publishers are seeking to be the one who puts out Gone Girl, be the one who puts out 50 Shades of Grey, be the one, Kite Runner, Girl on a Train. They want to get the lightning bolt that strikes from out of the blue, the book that's on everyone's tongue, blah, 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 blah. It's very tricky, and there are more failures than there are successes. Commercial authors like myself, like Nora Roberts, James Patterson, Stephen King, we keep the lights on. We keep the lights on very well for them. We are very valuable because every time I put out a book, I can guarantee Penguin Random House that at 12:01 a.m. of the day of release, that all of my readers, thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of people across the United States and the world will be ready and waiting for my book. And they can take that revenue and plug it into their profit and loss statement reliably. And while they're rolling the dice on the Gone Girl that may never be, and all those other books that fail in the marketplace, and again, they fail more than they succeed, I am a reliable income stream that helps them roll that dice over and over again. So I'm not Hemingway. I never pretend to be Hemingway. My books are not going to be read in 100 years. But I can support the literature development in the United States. I can give them the power to take chances on valid literature that will be read 100 years from now, and I'm very proud of it. So the thing that I think of whenever I sit down to write is I have these pictures in my head and these people, and they talk to me, and it's very, very artistic. But I don't think of myself as an artist. I'm a business person first. I write 7 days a week. I write 52 weeks a year. When I am in my office and I am doing what I'm doing, unless it is an arterial bleed, someone dropped a nuke on my front lawn, or the kitchen is on fire, leave me the hell alone. And my family supports me. It is a family effort to devote this much time and effort reliably over 15 years to an effort like this, which is by its nature very solitary. You need the support and guidance of my husband and my family, my friends, who support me and help me through this. So you would think, given my position, that I have this place in the market, that I own these readers, that I've earned them over 15 years, that I would feel really great about where I'm at. I don't exactly feel bad. I'm not exactly earning minimum wage. But I'm actually really worried. And let me tell you why. So as I say, I compete for leisure time. And I want to get paid for the 22 minutes that I fill for the woman who's on the subway going into Manhattan. I want to get paid for the woman who's reading me at 12:13 in the morning. I want that money from them because I'm providing them with the distraction they need for their discretionary time. But there are lots of other avenues that people can choose. So for example, last year, the music industry brought in roughly $5 billion domestically. That's sales for physical albums in the form of CDs, it's sales online. I'm not talking concerts or additions to that. That's a good book of business right there. If you think about movie ticket sales, for example, last year domestically, 2015, roughly $11 billion was spent on movie tickets. And that's, again, just domestically. So for publishing, last year we brought in roughly $27 to $28 billion, which is like $27.9 billion. Of that $27.9 billion, roughly half of it is fiction sales. So that's about $10 billion. Of the $10 billion of fiction sales last year, 13% was romance, which is essentially what I'm in. I mean, even though I pull readers from a lot of different genres, my main readership is romance. So 13% is roughly $1.08 billion, okay? The average romance reader is between the age of 30 and 54 years of age. 4 years ago, 39% of their product was read on ebooks. It's now actually probably around 60%. As an author, 70% to 80% of my readers read me on ebooks. If I go to Walmart and I say, what does a J.R. Ward reader buy in addition to my books? Those people buy nacho chips and a 2-liter Mountain Dew. I'm actually very proud of that because that shows commitment. These people are in and they want to stay awake, so I'm good with that. My readership actually pulls a bit of a larger demographic. My readership is probably 28% male because I write a lot of fight scenes. And my readers are actually 18 to 74 because, again, one of the advantages that I have in my marketplace is that I don't just pull women readers and I don't just pull romance readers. So you would think, given that I'm playing in this $1.08 billion kind of pool, that I'm doing all right. Here's the problem. So one of the other ways of measuring how people are spending leisure time is where are advertisers putting their money, okay? So if you look at advertising rates in the United States, $17 billion was spent last year on radio ads, which is, you know, radio's kind of, with all due respect to anyone who's in the industry, kind of, you know, on the downslide. Newspapers, not even worth mentioning. $80 billion was spent last year, and actually will be spent this year, I'm sorry, that is a current figure projection for the end of 2016. $80 billion will be spent advertising on TV. $72 billion is going to be spent by the end of 2016 on online advertising. And that's the problem. A couple of years ago, it was down around $17 to $18 billion. Last year it was $42 billion, now it's $72 billion. It doesn't take a great deal of extrapolation to realize that soon that will eclipse television ads. Internet advertising, it's the stuff you see on Facebook. You go to CNN.com to get your news, you see the ads on the other side. It's every realty, you know, like realtor ads, and you've got Amazon and their ads. It's indicative of the switch for discretionary time, moving away from things like newspapers, radio, music, movie theaters, to handheld smartphones. So now what's happening for my business and what's affecting my business is the fact that people are sitting on trains checking Facebook, they're putting blogs up, they're checking Instagram, they're looking at Twitter feeds. And instead of them spending 22 minutes reading part of a book on their way into work, they're looking at cat memes and videos of dogs that are I mean, and the fact, you know, it just drives me crazy that these people can't focus on giving me money. Personally offensive. But I think that a lot of people in publishing and a lot of people, you know, this is very true if you look at, you know, television, TV executives, it's a lot of what people are. We never expected to be in transition. When I started 15 years ago, I mean, this was a really good career path that I have, and it still is. There are a lot of advantages for everything to go to this E status because I can write more, I can sell more, and I don't have to travel because my online community will support me, get the buzz up, will sell it. As opposed to 10, 15 years ago when you had to travel to 106 cities, network with independent booksellers, get people to hand sell your books to readers that way because that was your only network. Now it can happen all online from, you know, buying living room. But I think that a lot of us are worried because we wonder, you know, Are attention spans changing? Screen time, is it rewiring people's brains? Will people no longer want to devote a 12-hour experience to reading a book that takes me 9 months to write, even though I only have 3 months to do it? So I'm very encouraged by the fact that there are a lot of people who want to read things. They want to read Facebook pages, and I can't get paid for that. There are still major authors who are doing very well. I'm very lucky to be one of them. But it is sort of it's a pivotal point in how people are spending their time. And it's just sort of an interesting commentary on being part of that transition, and I hope to make it to the other side. The last thing I will say is I don't identify myself as an artist. I don't identify myself as a creative individual. I identify myself as a businesswoman, a business person who wants to make a crap load of money. And which I think we can all, as Rotarians, embrace, because it is the truth. But at the same time, it is very troubling to realize that I can put the best product that I can write out in my marketplace to my readers, and they still might not choose it. So my brother-in-law, Mustafa, and I were talking the other night about how things go in cycles, and the irony of ironies, having reached a pinnacle in my career and being very handsomely paid for, I now find myself in the face of such insecurity going back to the fact that I just love what I'm doing. And it's just sort of ironic that, you know, as the business seems so transitory right now and things seem so in flux, I actually find myself thinking, wow, I just love what I do and who cares about the money. So I'll end on that note and take any questions that you wish. But I just really want to thank you. My dad would be so happy.
Jessica, thank you for being here. This is wonderful. I think you really told a great story about how much work it takes to be successful in the publishing business and writing, being an author. You mentioned that it takes you 3 months to write a 9-month book or title. How many books do you produce a year?
Right now I'm doing 3 hardcovers. So I have 6 books coming out because every time you do a hardcover, 6 months later there's a mass market rollover. So I have 3 new books and 3 rollovers every year.
So you're taking 9 months, 27 months, you're cramming, and you're writing 3 books at a time. So how do you know you're not repeating yourself?
Is it fair to all to be concerned? Yes. The way it works for me is as I will have a memory of everyone. I have a photographic memory, so I will remember everything from the necklace that you are wearing and where your label is, to the fact that your tie is coral and slightly off to the side. I'll remember your sunglasses right there. I'll remember the black and white print with the pink and the green lapel. If I close my eyes, unfortunately, I can't, well, no, actually that was horrible. I was going to say, unfortunately, I can remember you all. No, that's actually a good thing, but I can remember what everyone looks like. And the way the books work for me is they are their own people, they live somewhere else, they channel through me. I don't think of myself as creative because I don't make any of it up, it just sort of appears to me. And I remember it with the accuracy that I will remember everything about right now. I don't repeat myself because as lives will sometimes go in parallel directions, I've never actually met anyone who's lived anyone else's life. Do you know what I mean? And I think that I have trouble going to writers' conferences because people say, well, tell me how you do what you do. And I'm like, I don't know. It appears. I record what I am shown. That's it. I don't know where it comes from. I am aware of focusing the aperture of narrative at different points. So if I focus on loss in one direction in one book, I will focus the aperture of the narrative in a slightly different direction. So I am able to sort of color things a little bit and make editorial choices that don't repeat. But I don't really have any better explanation than no one else here is living anyone else's life. Does that make sense?
Sure. Jessica, besides being a very successful businesswoman and a wonderful writer, You're also a tremendous entertainer.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
so much fun. I've got two quick questions. One is, could you tell us how, in the beginning, how you got a publisher and how
You
that-
took my question, Henry.
All right. And in the beginning, how is it the same relationship you started with? And also, would you tell us about the Bourbon Kings?
Certainly, and Henry is one of my absolute favorite people. Actually, Neville is very much involved in this explanation. When I was working first at Tufts and then at Harvard in Boston, as people like to play golf, the way I took time off was I wrote. And I had actually started writing stories when I was 7 years old. So it was what I did in my downtime, all 24 minutes a day of it. But I eventually started to, futz around with the stuff, and Neville read one of my early books and said, "This is really great, you should get it published." And I was like, "Are you insane?" I mean, like, no. Because publishing was this vast mountain. I mean, I know plenty of lawyers and accountants and doctors. I'd never actually met a published author. I didn't know how to do it. And Neville's ex-girlfriend had actually interned for...
Wait.
I just want to let you know she's now a yoga instructor. I think he made the right choice.
Wait a second. The lesson here as Rotarians is don't burn your bridges, okay? So we're sitting in her apartment at 9 Willow Square, off Louisville Square on Beacon Hill, for those of you who are familiar with it, and I'm reading some of this loose leaf pieces of paper. I'm like, this is a real book. And just like she says, he's like, I don't know. I'm like, well, I dated this girl, Molly, pretty seriously in college, who actually gave me this bracelet for college graduation. No, this is... And
He's
so I
got
called
my
Molly.
wedding band on.
I mean, seriously, don't burn your bridges, folks. And I said, hey, Molly, I'm dating this girl. She's like, great. So it was through an ex-girlfriend that we got her first agent. Don't burn those bridges. Come on.
Yeah, no, and he's right, and I still speak of her with fondness. Every time I cash a check. But no, honestly, and so I sent this in, I never expected to hear from the woman, and she actually got a bidding war going on, and I sold 4 books and then got fired right when I came down here, because they were critically well received, but they were not selling. It was my first lesson that this was a business I was in. It was not a creative endeavor. And then I switched agents, and I've been very, very lucky to have gone to the next level and succeeded. The Bourbon Kings is a series that I started about a year ago, and it takes place in Charlemont, Kentucky, which is actually based on Louisville, and it's done very well. And I was hoping that NBC would pick it up as a series. Unfortunately, we got to the script stage and then they passed. But right now we're shopping it to USA Networks. And I don't know that anything will come of it, but it certainly was an education to learn how Hollywood works, which was a bit horrific. But honestly, the Bourbon Kings, it's a great story, and it comes from my love of living here in Louisville and being a proud Louisvillian. So.
I just moved here, so I am becoming a proud Louisvillian. Are your books available in the audio
Yep.
version?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Do you narrate them?
No, God, no. One of the things that I learned very quickly in this business is that you need to stay with what you're good at, and I'm good at writing. I have a lot of weird, esoteric, sort of obsessional compulsive disorder problems, but oddly enough, the fear that people most have is speaking in front of others, and I have no fear at all. I can't get on an airplane, but I can talk to 2,000 people in a room. I am, very grateful for the opportunities that I have, and I'm hoping that they'll continue to go in the direction they're headed. I don't know how it'll end up. Yes? Yes,
My
sorry.
name's Cynthia. Thank you for being here today. I've been very inspired and intrigued by your presentation. My question is, when you're channeling your stories, do they channel chronologically or do they channel?
No, so that's the weirdest thing. So I can be at, like,
Thank you.
this happens like almost all the time.
I was just curious how that process works and how you fit the pieces together.
So I'm a runner, and a lot of the stories funnel through when I'm running. But I can be at a cocktail party, like literally, it can happen anywhere at any time. I can be up here, and then all of a sudden, like, it's like reality goes away. It's like, and I mean this in a very respectful way, it's sort of like a high-functioning schizophrenia, where like all of a sudden, like, this thing comes down between me and the world. I can't see anyone, and I'm looking at it, and I can see everything about it. I can feel the air temperature. I can get in people's heads. I can, hear their thoughts. I can see through their eyes. It's a very sort of visceral, in vivo experience, and my job is to record that experience as best I can for others, so that when they read it, they have the experience that I'm having when it gets in the way. But it can be interrupted at any time. It can sometimes, it doesn't happen in dreams, which is weird. It just comes when it comes, but never, ever chronologically. So the only input I have is to try and order the description of events in such a way so that, number one, the narrative makes sense, and number two, when you write the kind of books that I do, I'm giving an emotional experience to the reader, right? So you have to time things. I have multiple plot lines going on. So you need to have the emotional crests and valleys so that it forms a roller coaster. You can't have everyone like hysterical all the time, because then it's just a one note. And you can't be middle of the road, so you have to take chances and scare yourself and scare everyone and all that stuff. You've got to have this going on, and then you've got to end up here. So I can kind of put the puzzle together that way, but that's the only choice I have in any of it.
I want to second what Henry said. You're a most entertaining speaker.
Oh, you're very gracious. Thank you,
Thank you
Mr.
for
Lamb.
that, and thank you for the very kind words about television.
Oh, I agree with you. My brother from another mother. I mean, you and I are in the same spot.
My question's real short. You said you write 7 days a week?
Yes.
52 weeks a year. How many hours a day do you write?
I draft usually between about 8 and 11:30, and then I go for a run, and then I have a 40-minute nap, and then I draft from about 2 until 6. That's my usual time for 7 days a week. And then if I'm going into a deadline, if I'm in copy edits or I'm finishing up a manuscript or I'm in galleys, I mean, it can be 7 in the morning until 8 or 9 at night.
I think I heard you right say that you're really not in this for the money, so this might be a very difficult question for you to answer, but I've always been curious as to how authors are compensated. I know sometimes they're compensated up front, but if an author sells 1 million books, do they get a cut per book, and if so, how much?
Okay, so here's the way it works. You have, and I can only speak to the New York publishers, okay? So the 5 major New York publishers have stated royalty rates. What that means is like I get 12% of the manufacturer suggested retail price of a hardcover. So hardcover goes for $26, $27. Over 50,000 sold, I get like 12% of that. You know, maybe it's like 10% for under 50, and then if it's over 50,000 or like over 100,000, maybe I get 24%. So that forms a revenue stream, right? But I get an advance. So when my agent goes and negotiates with my publisher, I receive an advance that is cut up into 4 sections. I get a quarter of it on signing, I get a quarter of it when I send the manuscript in, I get a quarter of it on publication of the hardcover, and I get the final quarter when the mass market paperback comes out 6 months later, okay? So that advance, say it's like $2 million, right? Before I can receive any further monies, that revenue stream has to earn that up from the bottom. So the size of your contract is like the size of a goldfish bowl. The stated royalty rate is how much water goes in to fill that. And when you have earned out your advance of, say, $2 million, then the overflow, fucking Christmas. I'm just being honest.
So if you got this advance and you wrote a real bummer, you might owe the publisher.
Okay, yeah, see, that's so that is exactly the problem. So you are only good as the last thing you didn't F up. So the challenge right now, and what people like me are so worried about, is if people are spending their 22 discretionary minutes going to work on Facebook instead of reading, then my sales will titrate down, the advance will go down. And then if they titrate down further, my advance goes down even further. It doesn't mean that I can't eventually get those monies back, but it does mean that because that stated royalty rate revenue stream doesn't change, my fishbowl can change depending on how fast it's coming in, but you're exactly right. Everything is judged. There is no job security. I could be out of a job tomorrow, and I think that's part of the reason, Mr. Lamb, why I work as hard as I do, is because I don't know when this door is going to shut. This door has opened for me to make national level money, but I don't know how long it's going to last. And I could go out of fashion. It may not just be the fact that people want to get on iPhones all the time. My books, maybe they get bored. Maybe I turn into a dinosaur. I hope that my mentor, Sue Grafton, sets the example, and I can be in this business for like 26 years like she has. And I came to her when I started to get worried about a year ago. I started to watch things change and watch patterns change and watch things go down. And she said, well, Jess, she said, publishing has been in bad books for the 26 years I've had a career. So she said, I wouldn't worry about it too much. But you're absolutely right. It's live or die every time.
So the answer is a fishbowl. Thank you very much.
Yep, fishbowl. Yes.
Hi, Harry Friedlander. So when you talk about what happens to you when you start to get a book, did that start to happen when you were working in the hospital? Did that process evolve? I mean, I can just see you being a hospital administrator and all of a sudden something happened. So how did that process develop?
I look at it as a hardwiring issue. You know how some people have a facility for numbers? It is simply the way. So I think to be a commercial author and to be extremely successful, you need two things. It's sort of like being an athlete. You need the will and you need the skill. And I have that unfortunate will where I am the thoroughbred who runs on the track until their heart explodes in their chest cavity and they die. I mean, I am hardwired to compete. I am hardwired for discipline. I am a miserable scrap of humanity, okay? But on the other side, I have this hardwiring thing where these pictures have been talking to me all my life. And my husband, I can remember clear as day, he turned around to me while we were thinking about moving here and said, your life, our lives will be happier if you write full time because you're going to get this stuff out of your brain. And he was right. And I thought for a moment that, particularly in the beginning of my career, that somehow the pictures would all dry up, that they would end, that if I wrote them all, that how there would be a terminal event and no more would show up, and that hasn't happened yet. But yeah, I think it's just the way, it's the will plus the skill, and then,
I have a question.
Oh, yeah.
Last thing. One last question. So, vampires. Did they appear, or was that a business decision?
No, I don't make any, no, and this is the weird thing. So the skill and this weird hardwiring and the high functioning schizophrenia is what I've got. What's the business part of it is how do I leverage it for cash, right? And it is a point of great pride that I have sold out. I am proud to be a sellout, and I will say that very proudly. I was fired, and because I was trying to write safe Nora Roberts romances. Okay, but here's the defect in that business plan. Nora Roberts already existed. No one needs another Nora Roberts if Nora Roberts is already out there. So I wrote the 4 books. They were critically well received. They found an audience, but it wasn't big enough. So after I got fired, and I was fired in the parking lot of Whole Foods on Shelbyville Road, which was like amazing. And I remember thinking to myself, what the hell, and what parallel universe am I in that I'm in Louisville, Kentucky getting fired right now? But my agent said the smartest thing. She said, you need to figure out who you are and what you really want to write. So I went and I tried romantic suspense, and I tried this, and I tried that, and I've always loved Stephen King. I loved creepy, weird stuff. So I was in the old bookstore where the post office, right next to the post office was. Right, well, no, it was Borders on Shelbyville. So I was there, and they were having a 2-for-1 sale or whatever. And my mom and I were checking out, and there was this rack of stuff. And all of a sudden, I saw this guy on this book cover, and he had fangs. And I was like, whoa. I said, wait a minute. I'm like, the vampire can be the good guy? I was like, wow, so that was great. So I went home and I thought about it for 2 weeks, and then all of a sudden this thing kind of came in the back of my head, and it watched me for about 2 or 3 weeks, and waited. And then all of a sudden, I guess I must have passed some sort of test, 10 books showed up in my head, boom, 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 boom. I had the entire proposal, a worldview, a language, the whole species, everything, wrote it all down, sent it off, figured out it would never get picked up because it was so out there for the time. It was just totally out there. And it got into another bidding war, and then it was just off to the races. So they showed up. I don't know why they picked me. I'm very grateful that I don't know any of them in person. And the great thing is that like some portion of my readership are these people who think they're vampires. And they'll come up to you as God is my witness and look you in the eye and say, you have misrepresented me. Meanwhile, you know what he looked like? He was a 5'4", 100-pound soaking wet weirdo with a skull head on a walking stick, high-heeled shoes, and fake implants on one feet. And I was like, I don't even know you. I'm like, so it's very strange how, which is why I've had to travel with security now, because these people don't understand the difference between reality and fiction and all that stuff, which I actually don't understand the difference between reality and fiction. I just made a shitload of money at it. I don't think I'm actually one.
Well, thank you for sharing.